Wasn't easy. The events that began to unfold 234 years ago, we had to fight the Revolutionary War to establish our independence from England. We had to struggle through the days when many people wanted each state to be a separate country, and that spawned the Articles of Confederation. Excuse me. We had to recognize that plan wouldn't work, and despite the fact that the framers of our Constitution had to be called together to fix the Articles of Confederation, they threw out the baby with the bathwater, so to speak, and created our Constitution, and then sold it to a very skeptical nation. None of it was easy, and forming the nation into something that resembles today's United States of America did not happen overnight. It was years after the Revolutionary War before we had a true Constitution. Then, when we thought things were looking a bit better, part of our country woke up to the horrible reality of slavery. But the rest of the country didn't see the problem, and we fought a civil war that brought this nation to its knees. I often wonder what this country would look like if that war had gone the other way. But that didn't happen. So 234 years later, here we stand, July 4th, 2010, the now point that marks the transition from the past to the future, the point in time when we can start contributing to the future of our great nation. Many of us here have been alive for more than a quarter of that time since the Declaration of Independence. That's a substantial chunk of time, and we've all had the opportunity to add to that rich body of history that distills into what the United States is today. We all have had our lifetimes to date. We've all made some contribution to our country. If any one of us had not been here, things would not be exactly the same. The framers of the Constitution had a big problem. How do you write a document that outlines the rights and privileges of our country's citizens without forgetting something, and without shutting the door to future progress that might make for greater rights in the future that they could not envision during their time? There's a key phrase in the preamble to the Constitution that explains all that. They said that we are all endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights. In other words, God Himself decides what human beings can do, not politicians, nor any political entities. The framers wrote a document that granted no rights, but very carefully did not take away any of the rights provided by the Creator. The Constitution does not, in fact, convey rights to the people. It keeps those natural, unalienable rights intact. Those framers were, for the most part, but by no means exclusively, men of wealth and power. Some were politicians, some were farmers, some were tradesmen of the era. What they had in common was an overriding desire to mold the clay of our fledgling nation into something that would survive for thousands of years. Their common drive was through involvement. So here we stand in 2010, endowed by our Creator with those same unalienable rights our forefathers had more than 200 years ago. We stand upon the results of the efforts that our ancestors contributed, and now we must look forward to continue to build out something our descendants can stand on a few hundred years from now. We don't all have to be Thomas Jeffersons to do this. We just need involvement. We have a city right here poised for great things. We have a city that has literally pulled itself, up by its bootstraps and made itself into a far better place than it was just a few years ago. And involved patriotic efforts of our citizens made that possible. We have a city that needs leadership. We need leadership not because the present community leaders are not doing their job, but rather because there's too great a disconnect between our citizens and those leaders. Few people ever attend our public hearings or our council meetings. Those hearings often result in the expenditure of thousands of dollars of our collective money and almost nobody comes to express an opinion on that matter. Your leadership, your contributions to the next few hundred years can start with your involvement today. Speak out to those in authority. Tell them things that you like and what you don't like. Above all, don't be afraid to criticize something that you don't think is right. That's not only the way to right some wrongs, but getting involved is your responsibility as a citizen. Examples of involvement are all around us. For many years, Patty Cook was involved in the seemingly impossible task of raising $12,000 or more every year for our fireworks display. Yet every year, she made it happen. This year, the gauntlet was taken up by Pam Smith, a lady who looked around and saw that someone had to do it. Guess what? She's done it. And tonight, due to her efforts, we will be treated to one of the finest fireworks displays in the state of Iowa. I realize it's dangerous to start naming names like that because it will be impossible to recognize all involved people in our community. Instead, I appeal to each of you. If you are involved, look around, see what needs to be done, and consider deeper involvement. If you've never done any community service, this is a great time to start. Nothing moves forward without leadership of the people, leadership through involvement. Involvement needs go beyond the civic level. Consider involvement in schools, churches, civic clubs, and like organizations, because that is also very important. These are all parts of your town, and you're needed to help guide its destiny. During the dark days of the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln started his famous speech at Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, with the famous words, 407 years ago. The words are archaic, but the message is eternal. Now I have a few words that I would like to say to him. Mr. President Lincoln, you played a major part in forming our nation. You led us through some of the toughest times that we ever had. We've had our ups and downs since your time, too, but we're still here and still moving forward 4 years since we declared independence. Collectively, we've all been molding that clay, Democrats, Republicans, men, women, children. All of us have made contributions, big or small, to our country, our state, and our city. You probably won't find many of our names in future history books, but you're going to see the lasting benefits of good deeds and involvement that we manifest today. On this day, 234 years after declaring and fighting for our independence, we have a great nation and a right to be proud. But the job isn't done, and every one of us has a continuing obligation to continue to move forward, keep up the momentum, and make our city, state, and county a better place to live. We need your involvement. My challenge to you is it's time to roll up our sleeves and get started. Working together, we can have a great future here in Emmetsburg. Happy 4th of July, and thank you.